Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Communications and Conversations. Coming to you here. I hope my audio is okay. I had a lot of people go ahead and state that my audio was a little off. So I don't know exactly why people are saying that or having that issue on there. I hope it's okay. Should be talking loud enough here. I almost muted myself there for a moment. So I hope it did. I'm got it kicked up here, so we'll see what's going on here. I'm gonna go a little bit higher. How about that? Hopefully it's good for everybody. All right. Well, we got all that fun stuff done. Welcome to this episode. And today's episode is gonna be about GMRS. We're gonna take a look at the history of GMRS. Kind of what's involved with GMRS, where it kind of came from, where it kind of is. And I'm gonna be straight out honest with you. We're gonna talk about a topic here today with GMRS that I don't know. It's gonna upset some people, I think, about it, to be perfectly honest with you, and it's gonna be not upsetting people on there. So it's gonna be across the board. But there's three things we'll talk about today. So one, we're gonna talk about GMRS. What is GMRS? Kind of the 10,000 foot overview, okay? Then we're going to talk about a little bit of a subject that people sometimes would have there. It's just that GMRS radios, there's a certain rhyme or reason to it. Don't use certain radios, that kind of thing. And we're going to talk about another thing that I actually kind of, another tuber, as they sometimes are now calling themselves, went along and supported this petition that someone was going ahead and offering. And I'm just like, that is stupid. That is stupid beyond stupid. But that's what today's episode is going to be all about. But before we get into today's episode, I'm going to take a moment and I want to talk to you about our sponsor. Our sponsor is JJK Communications. They are the ones that help us out here with the show, give us all of our little toys and trinkets and everything like that. And as a matter of fact, JJK Communications carries radios. That's right, radio. Well, why wouldn't they carry radios, right? But they don't just carry business radios or amateur radios or public safety radios. No, what actually JJK Communications lies is they specialize in different types of radio services. So if you're looking for a GMRS only radio, they have options for you. If you are looking for a business band, LMR, even kind of a public safety grade radio, they have options for you. All right, they're not just, hey, we're going to go ahead and sell you this cheap bell thing here. And it's like, they don't deal with that. What they do is they have cost-effective radios for what you need. Not only does JJK Communications have a wide variety and range of different radios, ranging from radios that are simple, easy, compact, small. Hey, it's a GMRS radio. Hey, it's a business radio. Hey, it's a MERS radio. Whatever the case may be, ranging all the way up to fully encrypted, digital capable radios that even runs on the JJK Connect radio system. That's right, JJK Connect radio system, a digital voice network that allows for you, the customers of JJK Communications, to be able to rent time or space on it, to be able to communicate not only just a local area or a little bit of a wider area, but also a regional basis area. So if you need communications, you need to buy those radios, you need them for whatever things, and not just purchase. They offer a great rental program. And as a matter of fact, for the month of April, wow, I wish. For the month of November, JJK Communications is offering a rental special package. That's right. If you're looking for radio rentals for, let's say, deer hunting, for hunting. As a matter of fact, great idea. You have a church group organization, a group of friends that is going to places. You know, hey, JJK Communications is based out of Baldwin, Wisconsin, right near Minnesota. You go to Mall of America for the weekend or something like that with your family. Don't bother with the cell phones, man. It's going to be crowded. Too many things. You're going to be checking prices, checking bank accounts and everything. Be able to have instant communications with two-way radios from JJK Communications and even on rental. Check them out on their website, www.jjkcom.com. Once again, www.jjkcom.com, or give them a call, 715-338-8458. That's their direct number, 715-338-8458. And they'll be able to help you out with your communication needs. Alrighty, back to the show now. So GMRS, General Mobile Radio Service. What is it? Why did it come from? Where did it come from? Why have it? Blah, 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 blah. Well, in a nutshell, GMRS was basically designed way back in the day. Now, I'm saying in a nutshell, okay? And people are going to be like, oh, that's what I was referring. No, GMRS was kind of designed as a radio service of some shared frequencies for the point and kind of the purpose of people to be able to communicate with people that didn't want to do amateur radio, that maybe didn't or wanted to talk about things that amateur radio did not allow to do, right? Maybe it was business, maybe it was family situations, maybe it was family matters, stuff. But also, too, is that to have a license but not have to take a test for the license, right? Because if you remember when GMRS came out decades ago, okay, we're talking decades ago, you bought the license, and the license covered X amount of people, like your house, you, or whatever. Amateur radio is for a person only, and at the time GMRS was kind of coming out, you had to still take your code. And people didn't want to take a code test, right? If I need to be able to communicate with my wife and kids, all of us are going to go get our amateur license, and then once we get our amateur license, like if I want to say, hey, honey, stop by the store on the way home, or stop by the Domino's, or stop by the Burger King, whatever the case may be, I couldn't do that on amateur radio because that was conducting business, right? So GMRS was kind of created as there is to be able to do that. Now, some of the GMRS frequencies, yes, were tied into business frequencies. So has GMRS always had a lower hanging level of some business usage? Yes. Yes, it has. Okay. I know some people are like, hey, you can't use it on GMRS. You can't use business. No, you can. There's ways to do it. Now, I'm not talking about FRS here. Okay, I'm not talking about FRS. FRS was kind of designed to be interstitial channels to the GMRS channels. If you ever notice, the frequency of FRS channels are in between the GMRS frequencies on there. And the reason being is that they were used as frequencies they kind of shoot in or horned in, some might call it in there, so that when you were not in the range of a repeater, or when you were traveling, or when you were close by, you could use those frequencies, and in essence wouldn't interfere with the repeater, and it could just be like local channels. So like, let's say you go to the park, right? And instead of trying to use one of the frequencies, you just need a low power, close range frequency. That's kind of what FRS was designed for. Now today's day and age, FRS is up to 2 watts. You can use them for business communications. As a matter of fact, we're probably looking at maybe doing a show coming up soon here from All of America, actually about scanning, because scanning is a hot topic. We're going to hit some of that stuff later. But a lot of businesses are using FRS right now. And it's so funny because people don't even realize with FRS, like, hey, guess what? Your conversations are not private, and people are talking about that out there. So what I'm getting at, though, is that the FRS has always had this rule that a GMRS repeater, and they have stipulations on repeaters too, okay? You can't just be throwing up a 300-foot, 100-watt repeater. No, there's restrictions on there. And let me back up, actually. If you want to, like, fact check, if you want to go ahead and saying, like, hey, I want to see what John was saying, if that was actually true or not, go on over to the FCC ECFR 47. So go to ECFR 47, Part 95. Okay, Part 95. So ECFR Title 47, Part 95. That deals with GMRS, that deals with FRS, that deals with MERS, that deals with CB radios and everything. Part 90 deals with business band stuff, okay? Part 95 is GMRS. Part 97 is amateur. You want Part 95. Because 95 is going to go in and say about, hey, what are the restrictions on the radios for GMRS? So there are restrictions on radios for GMRS. The biggest restriction and the biggest thing is going to come down to if, once again, your radio is built for GMRS only, or is it a radio that can be used on GMRS? So if a radio is in Part 95 certified, meaning Part 95 means it usually has like a fixed antenna, fixed power output on there. It is channelized. It can only be the GMRS channels or the FRS channels, and based on the channels you're using, different power outs, blah, 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 blah. That is like Part 95. But Part 90 deals with GMRS radios also. So in the GMRS radio statute law, whatever you want to call it there, part on there, it states that, the only radios permissible to be used on GMRS are basically radios that are part 95. And then basically I'm paraphrasing because like the meets the specifications laid out in this section, blah, 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 blah. Or radios that are approved for another band of operation that meets the requirements of the radio. So in other words, a part 90 covers part 95 frequencies, and you could use a part 90 in GMRS or marine or amateur, those kind of things like that on there. So that's what part 90 kind of covers here. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. Now, let's get back to a little bit more of the core of what today's show is going to be about. With that being said, GMRS has restrictions on the frequencies you can use. So they have frequencies that are specifically listed for GMRS. And there's basically 8 repeater channels. Okay. There are, on top of that, 14 FRS channels. That's kind of lumped into there, right? So you can get an FRS radio without getting a GMRS license. But if you get a GMRS license, you can also use FRS frequencies. All righty. Little power difference, little couple different news on there. But that's where a lot of the GMRS radios you'll see like channels 1 through 22. Wait, there's not that many. What was going on? So 1 through 14 is going to be your FRS channels. Okay, 1 through 14. But then channel 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21 and 22, which is 8, those are your GMRS frequencies. So GMRS frequencies come in a couple different varieties, right? So some people will say that a GMRS radio might have 30 channels. So one of the radios that the JJK Communications offers is the Retevis HA1G, which is the GMRS version. That has 30 pre-programmed channels because that's going to do FRS channels 1 through 14. It's going to do the outputs of the 8 GMRS repeaters. And then it's going to have 8 more channels, which are GMRS repeaters. So remember, a GMRS repeater frequency is 5 megahertz above. So for an example, 462.7000 is a GMRS frequency. The repeated frequency on there would be 5 up, so it would be 467.70000. Okay, so it has a repeated channel and it has a simplex channel on there. That's where you get like 30 channels on some of these radios. And then they say with the CT, CSS, and DCS codes, they're like thousands of combinations. Yeah, whatever. Anyway, we're not going to talk about that. But, okay, so you understand that. There's repeated channels, and there's a simplex and the output of the frequencies. Now, with GMRS, as we're continuing on here, they had some rules and stipulations. Part of that rules and stipulations were that a GMRS repeater cannot be connected into an interconnect network. So what does that mean? Basically, you could not put a GMRS repeater and have it connect in to a public standard telephone network, a PSTN, or an interconnect type network. So you couldn't have, quote unquote, an auto patch. Okay, amateurs could have auto patches, but you couldn't conduct business. But GMRS, no auto patch, but you could talk about sort of business kind of things on there that you couldn't on amateur radio. Now, there was some thoughts on there, and this is where we get into this really kind of thing, like a taste great, less filling kind of thing, left Twix, right Twix. So while you couldn't connect to a telephone network, so I could not pick up my GMRS radio and dial a telephone number to call someone. So I couldn't pick it up and dial, Pizza Hut or Domino's or whatever, the hospital. You couldn't even dial 911. You could not connect it to the telephone network whatsoever. Okay. Now, then there was this thing saying you couldn't connect GMRS repeaters to other GMRS repeaters through PSTN networks. So once again, it's saying you couldn't connect a GMRS repeater to another GMRS repeater using the telephone kind of network. Well, as the cost of the GMRS license went down, so it used to be $70, 10 years, covers basically like you and your immediate family. So like cover me, my wife, my kids, my folks, okay, my parents, okay, my wife's parents. So it grew out there. So $70 would get you that. Now, if you wanted to, like, could my dad and mom, could they get their own GMRS license? Hell yeah, they could. But if they didn't want to, they would just be under my call sign, right? Okay. So now as we start to develop this even a little more, the cost of the GMRS license went down. It went from 70 to 35. So now we're doing $35 for 10 years instead of 70. Now what happened then is that that missing 35, as I call it, that went towards amateur radio licensing. So now as an amateur radio operator, here's your $35 to government. Here's, oh, by the way, I have to take a test for that, and I have to pass the test. And, oh, I have to pay for the sitting of the test. Now, most people will go ahead and saying, okay, wait a minute here. I have to pay $15 as average, right? Some might do 20, but let's say 15, okay? So now, wait a minute. I'm writing out the check to the feds for $35. I'm writing a check out to the local testing people, which 15 plus the 35, I did math at upper school, that's $50. Whoa, wait a minute here. Now that $50 is only going to get me licensed on the amateur band. Now, could my kids and my wife talk to me? No, they'd have to get amateur radio licenses too. Oh, guess what? We still can't talk about business things to a degree if we wanted to. Okay, well, what's the alternative? Well, GMRS allowed you to do that. And GMRS allowed you to do that. Hey, now it's $35. Now it covers you, your wife, your kids, all that kind of stuff. So you started to see the use of GMRS licenses and repeaters go up. All righty. I don't have the exact stats, but I would venture to say that GMR licenses are got to be getting close to the same or maybe even more than amateur licenses in Wisconsin. I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I know amateur licenses in Wisconsin are down. I think that has to do with some of the leadership of ARRL, but that's a different episode. Especially the people in charge or elected officials in ARRL in Wisconsin. That's a different episode. That's my opinion. Sorry. My opinion only. I told you I'd say when it's my opinion. That was definitely my opinion. But with that being said, I think GMRS licenses are up, but it is. Why not, right? So instead of me, my wife, and 2 kids, 5 kids, 10 kids, whatever, mom and dad, everybody have to get their amateur license just so we could all talk to one another and be somewhat restrictive on it. No, I can get my GMRS license. $35 covers all of us. So a lot of people were doing that. Now, why do I bring this up? Well, I bring this up because it dates back to this repeater thing. So people wanted to be able to talk more to one another about things, and they wanted the range of the repeaters to extend out. So then they were linking repeaters. Okay? Linking repeaters. Now, they were doing this through things like an all-star connection and this and this and this. So then the FCC kind of stepped in, and they, in their infinite wisdom, went along and were like, nope, you can't link repeaters. You can't link repeaters because that's connecting them to a interconnect device. And a lot of people are like, back the horse up, Chet. Okay, and I kind of was one of those two there because now, so you're saying the internet is an internet connected or internet linked device because it didn't say anything about the internet. And this was linking via the internet, via voice. Okay, so if you can't link via the internet, but you're viewing the internet as like a interconnect network, a telephone connect network, well, then you need to express that all out the same in all the different types of radio services out there. So you can't go ahead and saying a ROIP device, okay, radio over IP device, is the equivalency to a degree of a telephone. I don't know. That guy, I don't know. That kind of get that there. Now, this is where it gets very controversial for people because some people were like, you know what? You're linking all the repeaters together. And there were some repeaters that were like linked together. Now, up here in Wisconsin, where we're based out of, where the show's based out of and everything, yeah, you had repeaters that were like a here on the map and here on the map and here on the map, and they didn't overlap areas. But there were some places, like, I'll give you an example, Chicago suburbs. I know some people listen to my show there. Nothing against wrong with everything. But some of those repeaters were linked together, and they were on different frequencies, but they were all linked together. And they had, like, you could put yourself on a pin on a map here and covered 4 different GMRS repeaters, and all of them would be linked, so it would be the same conversation. So is that a good idea? No, not really. We're limited on frequencies in the GMRS band, right? Remember we said we had 8 repeater frequencies. So we're limited. So that's there. And that kind of, once again, that's a controversial thing. Some people are like, we should be able to link GMRS repeaters. And other people are saying, we don't need to link GMRS repeaters. Now, GMRS repeaters don't have any coordination on there. They really don't. And if you come from the amateur world, that's kind of an okay thing, and that's kind of a really pain in the derriere kind of thing because Repeaters are going to cause interference to other repeaters, and there's no coordination. There's no matter of record on there because GMRS, people saying, you got a GMRS license, you can throw up a GMRS repeater. Well, do I have to have anything special? Nope, follow the rules of the GMRS repeater operation. Okay, and if they're following the rules and you have a GMRS repeater on 462.700 in town A and 4 miles over in town B, there's another one on 462.700, and it's just different PL tones or just different tones. Well, guess what? They're both legally able to be there, so you can't really argue on that. So, anyways, that's that. But that's kind of one of the controversial things. The other thing is GMRS is meant to be analog only. Analog only. There's no meant to be no encryption. There was encryption at one time, voice inversion, but that got axed. Okay, more so on the FRS side, but that all got axed. And now there's no encryption and analog only. So some people will be like, well, there should be digital capabilities. And some people will break law and do in digital, or I've even heard a few times, digital encrypted. Come on, guys and gals, really? We're going to be doing this kind of thing? That we're doing that in GMRS. And their basically answer is that, how are they going to know it's me? How are they going to know how to catch it? And it's kind of like, okay, yeah, I guess you are, but really just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it. So the GMRS band was getting crowded. In some areas, it is very crowded, and you have this overlap on there. So a petition went in front of the FCC to open up low band as GMRS. So we're talking like 40 megahertz range. I was kind of opening it up to GMRS usage. So basically, instead of being UHF in the 462 range or 467 range, they were looking to open it up into low band. Now, this is the part I'm going to get controversial on. And I'm going to say my opinion here. I think that's kind of stupid. Because if you're taking a look at low band, we already have CB, right? CB is in 27 megahertz area. So you're already there. Now, people are going to say, John, 40, 47, 48, 49 megahertz is completely different to 27 megahertz. Yeah, it is. It is. It's not the same band, but it's going to have some of those similar principles on there. But if we're opening up, why are we going lower, right? Why are we going lower into bands that have weird propagation sometimes to bands that have those issues? So here's where I reply to one of the tubers is that I said, why aren't we looking at 900 megahertz? Why aren't we? Okay? It's really an unused band. The 900 megahertz band has a very large of ISM, industrial, scientific, and medical. Okay? The 900 megahertz band for voice. So back in the day, there was a lot of 800 megahertz business band stuff, and there was like 900 megahertz business band stuff. As a matter of fact, and don't quote me, it's been a while since I checked, but I want to say that even the Packers Stadium over there, Lambeau Field, I believe that they had a 900 megahertz digital trunked, or at least a trunked radio system for around that stadium on 900 megahertz. What else has been in 900 megahertz, John? Well, besides having a lot of the channelization, so when they laid out the 900 megahertz band, they laid it out in channel steps like theirs. So you can actually go Google 900 megahertz channel spacing for like business, and it will tell you the channel spacing on there. So when you were like programming 900 megahertz radios, unlike VHF, UHF, it's unpaired, unmatched. UHF does 5 megahertz, but like VHF and sometimes other bands, they don't have a matching of it. It's not always 3 megahertz up or 1 megahertz up or whatever. 900 was really channelized on there. And you could actually take, like on some radios, you could actually go in and you would program, let's say, channel 4 on your radio. It would be channel 4 on your display on your radio. But that was like maybe the 900 megahertz channel 24 or 46 or 28 or 17, whatever the case may be. And what that was is that was that channel number, so that when you're using your radio, you key up on that and then it's automatically go to that channelized. When you were doing with trunk systems, that was super easy, because if you did LTR or you did some sort of trunk system, you didn't have to worry about channel tables or anything because it was already set there. But here's what I'm saying why 900 megahertz is not bad. And if anything, I think we should be petitioning not for low band analog radios, okay, but a set of 900 megahertz channels. Now, the tuber there, he'll remain nameless, but he was like, have you ever been to a metropolitan area on less than a 900 megahertz? It's blah, 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 blah. And I I call BS on that because guess what? The ISM band has a lot of stuff going on there. Yes, in the amateur band, it is crowded. Yes, that's part of the ISM band. In the an ISM band also is your mesh-tastic stuff, right? And yes, it gets crowded in there because that's in the ISM portion of the band where amateur radio has seconds fiddle to it and everything like that. I'm not talking about that. Get your head out of your amateur license, okay? I'm talking about utilizing, there's almost 100, I think actually maybe even over 100, but for sure at least 100 900 megahertz channels that are out there that can be used. Now, think of it this way, folks. What if we took 10 of those 100 channels, 10 of them, and what if we went and we said, okay, we're going to take these 10 channels, and how about this? How about we let people to explore that digital world? No, so we create a GMRS band in 900 megahertz and let it explore into a digital efficiency type system. So like either using something that can go, so like DMR, which gives you 2 slots, or like using NextDen, which gives you a 6.25 slot. I would be all on board for, because the greatest part about NextDen with this regards, this kind of thing I'm talking about, is you could take 2 channels and what it would be in a 12.5 kilohertz bandwidth on that channel, you could actually put 2 NextDen channels right in there. So your 10 channels became 20 channels, really. Okay, DMR is fine, but you know you have the time slots on there. But I mean, even still, you could achieve the same thing, right? Now, people are saying, well, the reason is there's no one who's willing to make 900 megahertz equipment. BS. Forget that noise. Okay, Motorola makes a DTR radio in the 900 megahertz spread spectrum ISM band. Okay, Kenwood used to make 900 megahertz radios on there. They don't need to be great fancy radios. And if they're channelized and everything like that on there, it's even going to be more of a lower cost to be on there. But there are places and peoples and things that actually do still use 900 megahertz band. As a matter of fact, 900 megahertz was so popular, all the paging companies migrated to it for a while there. You looked at all the major paging companies. A lot of them were on like 929.9375 or 931.3325. There was like certain 900 megahertz paging channels because guess what? They knew the propagation of 900 megahertz. They knew it wasn't as crowded as VHF, wasn't crowded as UHF, and had a little bit better, more building penetration and overviews of how it could absorb in an area. So the thing about it is, moving forward with GMRS, why not use 900 megahertz? And why not embrace digital? If the whole world of amateur radio and communications and everything, well, not so much amateur radio. Let me take amateur radio out of that sentence here. If the whole world of communications is supposed to get more compact, more solid, we're supposed to go to narrowband and narrowband. We went from 25 kilohertz channels. Now we're down to 12.5 kilohertz channels. Now they want, if you do DMR, you do NextDen, yeah, you can get down to almost a 6.25 equivalent for channels. It takes up less space and everything, blah, blah, blah. Okay, cool, great. So why don't we do that with GMRS? Why don't we embrace this and say, hey, people want more GMRS frequencies. People want more aspects to it. Okay, how can we do that? Let's get rid of some of those 900 megahertz channels that are sitting there and literally doing nothing. And let's start to pump some of these companies up there that can do it. Okay? Because it is possible and it can be done. It can be done. So, that's a food. That's a thought. Now, what's getting controversy in today's show, like I told you, the linking of the repeaters. Okay, using business communications on GMRS. That's kind of a no-brainer, right? You really can't fight on that one. People are going to do it illegally, right? Just like talking digital on the UHF GMRS frequencies. But like linking repeaters. What is the division at? Should there be allowed to link repeaters? And maybe it's linking only on a certain frequency, like only, let's say, for example, on the 462.7, just as an example. Okay, I'm not advocating for it, but just an example. You can only link GMRS repeaters if it's on the 462.700 frequency. Okay, you know what I mean? There's those ideas around that on there. But no, today, no linking. Once again, pisses off some people fierce, other people doesn't. And then the other part is, you know what? Let's take a look at that 900 megahertz band. Why can't we adapt it to GMRS? Once again, out of like 100ized channelized frequencies, I guarantee you some aren't being used. And if people are saying, well, right away people are saying, well, John, some of those might be used for business band frequencies. Guess what? 2 of the GMRS repeater frequencies came from the business world. If you take a look at it, they're still listed as Gold Dot and I believe Blue Dot, if I remember correctly, or Gold Star, Blue Star, one of them. I don't remember which they used because it changed names on there. But those were actual GMRS or those were business frequencies that became GMRS frequencies. So we can adopt it. Same thing with MERS. Walmart used to use 154.600 all the time for their stuff, or 154.570. MERS channel, what was it, 4 and 5, I think they were. Okay. And MERS is used on it. So I'm saying. I'm like, hey, we can do this. And I guarantee you, if you make a law saying, hey, here's 900 megahertz that can be used for GMRS, people are going to find the way. People will find the way. And by the way, there are some DMR, for an example, radios that do 900 megahertz. So it's out there and it's capable. Alrighty. Once again, looking at that time on the clock here. We're going to go ahead and it's got to be that time, folks. It's got to be that time. We have to, all good things need to come to an end. That includes the show on there. Hope you had a fun time. I really think this is great about talking about GMRS. Hey, but I do want to say one more thing coming up here. Thanks for not last week. Last week was Halloween. So we went along and we kind of took a little bit of a break, right? A couple of Halloween parties. Yeah, we'll talk about that later. But anyways, I'm going to be looking for some people coming up on an education thing here. I'm going to have a little debate. I want you guys, the listeners, to be involved. I'm looking for someone who is against encryption on public safety frequencies. So encrypting the fire channel, police channel, EMS channel. I'm looking for someone who is for it, and I'm looking for someone who's against it. And I want you guys to come on. We'll have a little fun debate on there. We may even try it live, depending on who I can get. So if you're interested, reach out to me, and through our channel here, through our Facebook channel, that kind of thing like that out down there. Reach out to me if you want to be for or against encryption. I'm going to have you on the show here. We don't have to show your face. I just need to hear you do it and answer some questions. So with that, everybody, take care, stay safe, and guess what? I'll catch you on the radio sometime.